Florida Live starts now.
Well, good afternoon to you and welcome into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35. We've got a lot to get to today. We're going to talk about redistricting and what those efforts in Florida are going to look like with the announcement this week of the members of the House Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting. We'll talk about that in about half an hour. We're also going to hear from a Florida Democrat who has entered the U.S. Senate race. So what does she expect from that, even facing an uphill battle when it comes to challenging Ashley Moody in that Senate race? We'll have more on that in just a little bit. In our Tampa connection, going to hear more about the details of Operation King's Fall, a large drug bust in the Tampa area. But we begin today with a look at hurricane season, because today marking the statistical peak of hurricane season, and yet the Atlantic remains quiet. And joining us live now inside our streaming studio here is Fox 35 Storm Team meteorologist Laurel Blanchard. And Laurel, we appreciate you joining us here.
Happy to be here.
So we often talk early in the hurricane season about how things are slow, those first couple of months, and knowing that it's a marathon, not a sprint, to kind of use the cliche. And here we are now at the statistical peak, and it's still quiet.
It's
knocking on wood, of course. Yes.
I hate using that Q word because I feel like it kind of goes for like the same with any emergency services. As soon as that word kind of gets said, everything's kind of out home free from there. So we're going to be continuing to monitor things. However, enjoying it right now, because again, we really aren't seeing too much out there. And even though today, this is the statistical peak of hurricane season, September 10th, kind of right in the center. This is usually when we start to see that ocean water kind of in that very prime area of that temperature where it really kind of allows for that development to happen, as well as the atmospheric conditions are usually correct. Not really seeing that too much at the moment, and we'll talk about why in a few minutes. But overall, we still have a long way to go. That even though that this is the peak, we have the whole back half of the mountain to kind of go down, and it's about 57% of the season left to go.
Yeah, we're certainly not downplaying the rest of this, but by the fact that we're kind of at this point and it's been quiet so far, because we have seen time and time again, including last year, where a similar setup where things really picked up in the back half of that season.
And I'm glad you said that, because I actually do have a graphic on that in a couple minutes, kind of showing just how things progressed so quickly last year. But so far, it has been a busy season, but it's been kind of a spread out busy season. So we had Andrea, Barry, Chantal, Dexter, all tropical storms. And then we kind of had this outlier. We had Erin reach that category 5 strength. And then we kind of had Fernand kind of cooling it down a little bit, back down to a tropical storm. We thought we were going to have Gabrielle with this last wave, but this dry air that has been all over the Atlantic has really put a wrench into things and kind of has almost stopped that development. So Colorado State University, just to remind you, at the very beginning of the season, this was the April 3rd forecast, calling for 17 storms, 9 hurricanes, 4 major hurricanes. And the July 9th update, this was the last update that Colorado State University put out, 16 named storms expected through the entire season. So we've had 6 already, 10 more to go is expected from Colorado State. Hurricanes, we've had 1, they're expecting 7 more, 3 of those being major hurricanes. And again, we had Erin being a major hurricane, so that's something that we're going to be watching, seeing if Colorado State University holds true through the rest of the season. Here's the tropical satellite. We could be watching a 20% chance as we head through the back half of the evening due to that wave that's just off the African coastline. Luckily, though, there's a couple of factors out there that it's pretty confident that this may not develop as quickly as what we were thinking. But again, tropics are quiet right now, and fingers crossed, hopefully it's going to stay that way as we head through the rest of the season. Taking a look, peak of hurricane season. Again, a couple of factors that have been kind of pulling this in. We have this huge area of high pressure across the central Atlantic, and we also have a lot of Saharan dust. So basically, both of these are kind of working in tandem. This high pressure system pulling in extremely dry air that's in the central part of the Atlantic, pulling it down into where we're seeing the possibility of that tropical genesis happening off the coast of Africa. Currently, when we get in September, we're starting to see those warmer waters, especially in the tropical Atlantic. And with that, it's kind of acting as a buffer. You can kind of see a little bit of moisture just to the south of that Saharan dust. But because of that dry air and the dust combined, that moisture is really not going to do anything. So we're going to be focusing in on that. But those are really the two factors of why this season has been so quiet. And Garrett, back to your comment, the season last year started off slow. We had this huge gap in between Chris and Ernesto. We only had Debbie in between the two, which unfortunately impacted us here in Florida. But that was a huge gap. That was almost a 2-month gap in between those storms before it was rapid fire. And if actually we take down that lower third, we can see right in the center, that's September. September, right in the center of where we saw Francine, Gordon, Helene, Isaac, Joyce, and it was pretty much open season from there. So we're kind of getting into that time where we could be seeing the pattern start to shift. And this is exactly what happened last year, of the possibility of really starting to see things fire up.
And why is that? You know, for those who may not kind of be familiar with that, I know you kind of talked about some of the reasons it's been quiet so far. So why is it that it's this time of year that things really start to kind of ramp up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So really, we start to see the pattern shift ever so slightly. So we're right now seeing that high pressure, still a lot of Saharan dust. By the time we get into the end of September, those factors are most likely not going to be at play anymore. And also, it all has to do with the ocean water too. Once that ocean water starts to get warmer, it kind of shifts a little bit. So especially we're focusing in the beginning of the season off the coast of Western Africa. And then once we actually get towards the middle of September, our focus kind of shifts, not necessarily focusing off the coast of Africa anymore, but more focusing in on our homegrown system. So
because of the temperatures of the water there?
Exactly. And that's also, again, part of the reason we have that moist air kind of over the area, which is just that jet fuel on top of that ocean water that we see. That could easily lead to a system kind of firing up. And then also off the East Coast, as we see those frontal boundaries, we just saw a frontal boundary, and it's still affecting us today, that very warm air that's not only creating the humid temperatures, Garrett, but also that flooding rain that we've been seeing the past couple of days. Any little circulation that comes off of a cold front like that could easily cause a little bit of a spin up off the East Coast. So basically it's the Gulf, the Caribbean, the East Coast, where we're going to be seeing that warmest water, especially heading into September, October, and even November, that we could be very much seeing a homegrown system.
And that Saharan dust doesn't have as much of a factor at that point.
Correct, because usually once we head into about, I would say, beginning of September, Saharan dust usually doesn't reach us here in Florida. Yes, earlier on in the season, absolutely. We saw that in June. We saw that all of July.
We feel it early in the season, too.
I can't tell you how bad my allergies were at the beginning of July. And so that doesn't really have too much of a factor anymore. So it's, again, floodgates are open, and what's going to be happening for the rest of the season, we're just kind of have to sit and find out.
And speaking of floodgates, we have seen a lot of rain over the past couple of days here in Central Florida. Some places dealing with flooding as well.
Yeah, and that's so unfortunate. And there is a reason why, because of that. We've kind of had this system and this frontal boundary laced over Central Florida, and that has caused, in my backyard yesterday, I think I clocked in 5 inches of rain just from my rain gauge alone, and areas especially across New Smyrna Beach, areas especially across areas of Orange County, we saw incredible rain totals. So with that, just taking a look at a few of those, Williston and Levy County, over 7 inches of rain. Bellevue and areas across Marion County saw over 5 inches of rain just to the west of Ocala. And Volusia County and Flagler County, we saw footage yesterday of flooding in New Smyrna Beach. And that wasn't even hurricane related. That was just rain related, which was crazy. And again, seeing over 7 inches of rain in some areas just from rain alone. Usually we see this at the peak of rainy season. Now we're kind of starting to see that rainy season calm down a little bit, but it doesn't seem calm from what these totals are, because even as we take a look in central Orange County, Winter Park, areas across Altamont Springs near the airport, clocking in almost over 9 inches of rain, 9.5 inches of rain near the airport. So it's definitely interesting because of this low pressure system right here. So I do have good news. This is moving on out of here, but this has been kind of what's responsible for all of this rain that we've been receiving. Because take a look at that low pressure system. This is just taking all of that moisture over the Gulf and funneling it over Florida. And we have a good roadblock too. You can see that trough kind of laced over Orlando and Daytona Beach. That's that roadblock. So all of this moisture has nowhere to go except across Florida, which has been causing that just immense rain over the past couple days. Yeah,
we will certainly be glad to see that to kind of move on out and get back to our kind of more typical pattern, because this is certainly not what we're used to seeing.
No, not what we're used to seeing, but I do have good news. Once this moves out of here, it's actually going to be pleasant for a couple of days, like getting a little bit of a taste of fall, but not like fall, if you get what I'm saying.
Okay, so a little drier, a little drier, maybe a little cooler at least.
Drier, a little bit cooler. If you find cool going from like the low 90s into the upper 80s, yes, a little bit of a cool down for sure. And it's going to be a little bit less humid. It's a little bit more cloud cover though, but overall we're going to be seeing things slowly start to feel a little bit more like fall here in Central Florida.
All right, something to look forward to for the weekend then. Fox 35 Storm Team Meteorologist Laurel Blanchard, we appreciate you joining us here on Florida Live.
Thanks, Garrett.
We are going to take a quick break here, and as we do, give you a live look at downtown Orlando. You can see some of those clouds they are gathering over downtown in Lake Eola. We're going to take a break on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Live look along International Drive in the tourist district of Orlando. We saw some rain in that area earlier. Now you're just seeing some clouds, but also seeing the sun out along I-Drive as well. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon live on Fox Local, YouTube, and on Fox 35. It is time now for our Tampa Connection, and for that we go to Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, who joins us live now from the Fox 13 newsroom in Tampa. And Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Garrett. Thanks for having me today. We're going to start in Hernando County, where the Sheriff's Office held a press conference earlier today to announce the bust of an illegal gambling and drug ring. Now, during this press conference, the Sheriff's Office said that they made 22 arrests, and the Sheriff Al Nienhuis said many of those suspects were also responsible for violence that victimized innocent people. Now, this was called Operations King Fall, and this operation began last October, and it all focused on the Super Saver store, which is also known locally as King's Food Store. That's located just south of downtown Brooksville on Jefferson Street. Now, deputies said that they were able to infiltrate a gang organization and recover more than 3 pounds of cocaine, 57 grams of fentanyl, and $83,000 in cash. Now, this all started when the owner of the store was found to be making payments for illegal gambling gambling that was happening within that store. The gambling led to fights, shootings, and drug deals. The sheriff said one of the things that makes operations like this so difficult is that so-called no snitch culture, because law enforcement officers need people to talk. He said that there is also fear that groups like this will take revenge on people who do talk to law enforcement. But fortunately, in this case, they were able to arrest 22 suspects in Operation King's Fall. Now, this investigation was supported by grants from the Florida SAFE program, which supports local law enforcement as they try to bust up drug rings. Garrett?
Nancy, that no snitch culture is something we hear time and time again from law enforcement, and how difficult it sometimes can make their jobs in cases like this, and shootings, other cases, all kinds of cases. We hear them say the difficulties that kind of comes from this when they can't get people to talk.
Yeah, and that was definitely something that the sheriff spoke extensively about this morning, was that no snitch culture, because it is so imperative to have people talk to law enforcement officers so that they are able to stop operations like this. And as he mentioned, of these 22 suspects, he said many of them were responsible for violent crimes within Hernando County. This again was happening in Brooksville, specifically in downtown Brooksville. So it is imperative to get people to talk. But again, he did also mention that there is fear of retaliation, that these groups will go after people who talk to law enforcement officers. So it is kind of a catch-22 there.
Our second story here in the Tampa Connection, Nancy, a high-profile trial beginning in Polk County.
Yes, that's right. Cheryl Williams, she is on trial for the 2022 shooting of a Polk County law enforcement officer, Blaine Lane. In October of 2022, Deputy Lane, he was helping serve a felony warrant in Polk City when investigators say Cheryl Williams pulled out a gun. Now, that gun was later determined to be a very realistic-looking BB gun. Once she pulled that out, deputies fired. They hit Williams, but they also hit Deputy Lane, who was outside watching a potential escape door. Now, Williams, she was charged with second-degree murder of a law enforcement officer because investigators say she was responsible for Lane's death under Florida law. She faces several other charges as well, including multiple counts of aggravated assault, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and resisting arrest. At the time of her arrest, the Polk County Sheriff's Office said Williams, who is now 49, had a criminal history including 11 felonies and 4 misdemeanors. She previously spent 9 years in Florida State Prison. If she is convicted, she does face spending the rest of her life in prison. Now, Deputy Lane, he was just 21 when he died. He had 3 children, one of whom he never got to meet. Garrett?
Oh, gosh, so heartbreaking. Had his whole life ahead of him. I can only imagine what that was like for his family. And, several years have passed now, and the trial just now beginning. I'm sure also going to be a difficult time for them to, kind of have to relive some of these emotions and things, from a few years ago, and something they live every day.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult time for them as well. And as I mentioned, he did have a baby who he never had an opportunity to meet. So it is heartbreaking that all of his children will be growing up without their father.
And finally, Nancy, our third story in the Tampa Connection today, and this is a disturbing one out of Pinellas Park.
Yes, that's right. Officers found a 26-year-old man hiding in the bedroom closet of a 16-year-old girl. Now, Pinellas Park officers, they said that they were called out to this home on Sunday afternoon after someone called 911 to report a burglary in progress. That 911 caller said that they saw a man crawling into a window. When police arrived, they said that the homeowners had no idea that there was a man inside their home. When those officers did a check of the house, they found Eliezer Soto hiding half naked in the homeowner's 16-year-old daughter's bedroom closet. Now, detectives say that the teen had been communicating with Soto on various social networks. Officers said that their communications were sexual in nature, and Soto went to the teen's home after she invited him. He was arrested for traveling to meet a minor and unlawful sexual activity with a minor. Detectives are still working this case. They are investigating to determine if additional incidents or charges may apply. Garrett?
Gosh, I'm sure a parent's worst nightmare right there, and just another reason that we hear from officials, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's state leaders, just to keep an eye on social media and know what your kids are doing, because it's not hard to for them to be in contact with people that like suspects like this.
Yeah, it's definitely important to pay attention to what your kids are doing on social media. This man, again, he was 26 years old. He told officers that the 16-year-old girl who he did meet on social media had invited him over. And again, he chose to get into that home by climbing through a bedroom window. A neighbor saw that and called 911. And he was found hiding half naked in that teenage girl's bedroom closet. So it's definitely important to keep an eye on what your children are doing online.
All right, Fox 13 digital content producer Nancy Gay, we appreciate you joining us for our Tampa Connection.
Thank you.
As we go to break here on Florida Live, going to give you a live look at our Port Canaveral camera, sponsored by Launch Credit Union. This is live in Brevard County right now. Keep it here. We've got more Florida Live after this. Live look right now from our Launch Credit Union camera in Titusville, looking toward the Kennedy Space Center along Florida's Space Coast in Brevard County. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and also on Fox 35. A former Brevard County Public School Board member has thrown her name in the ring for the U.S. Senate race. We're talking about Jennifer Jenkins. She is now looking to challenge Republican Senator Ashley Moody in that race in 2026. She was here at Fox 35 today, spoke with Fox 35's Ryan Elijah about deciding to run and how she's going to position herself in this race, which the reality is certainly an uphill battle for any Democratic candidate to unseat a Republican in a race like this. How's she looking to do that? Here's her conversation with Ryan Elijah.
Let's start with just the decision to get to this point. Obviously not a decision that is taken lightly. What led you to decide I'm in this race?
Yeah, it's the same decision process I went through as a school board member. I was an educator married to a teacher, and I was sick and tired of the things that I was seeing and fighting for autonomy in the classroom and raises. And so I stepped up and I ran for school board, and I feel the same way right now. I feel like we really need a fighter in Washington who understands what it feels like to be an everyday person and to struggle with affordability.
You've seen things kind of tilt toward the right side in Florida, especially at the state level. When you look at that come August, what does it take to get over the top?
I'm not really focused on that too much. I'm not really fearful of it. I'm from Brevard County. It's a deep red county. When I ran in 2020, Donald Trump won by 17 points, and I ended up defeating the Republican incumbent by nearly 10, because that's not important to me. What's important to me is to be true to who I am, be honest about where I stand on the issues, and talk to every voter, regardless of their registration, to start to build trust and build trust between themselves and myself.
There are already some people in this race. It's hard to say what could happen between now and August. How did that factor in, and how will you look at that strategy?
I absolutely took that into consideration, but for me, this was really something I felt like I needed to do. I needed to speak up. I needed to continue to use my voice. I needed to be an example for my daughter and the young women in my community who have supported me over the past 4.5 years. So it's really just focused on what I believe is best for the state and a decision I made for myself.
There will be a lot of issues between now and August that will be important. When you look at 2 or 3 coming out of the gate, what would you focus on?
Number one, affordability. Florida families are being hit with skyrocketing costs, whether it's our homeowners insurance, our rent, our groceries, our utilities. We need a representative who understands what that feels like. Ever since I graduated from college as an educator in the lowest paid state in the country for teachers, I have had to work 2 jobs just to make ends meet and to pay the bills. So that's number one for me. And number 2, I've always been an advocate for public education, and I've always been an honest advocate that not everything is perfect and there's things that need to be changed. But I do believe it's a foundation for our children's future. It's the backbone of our democracy, and I think it's something that we shouldn't even remotely be toying with dismantling.
The Florida Republican Party welcomed you to the race by saying she put masks on kids, she took rights away from parents. What would you say to that?
I'd say I'm a parent, and that line just makes me laugh every time I hear it. I didn't take rights away from myself. What I did was give an opportunity for all kids to access school in the safest way that I thought was best and possible, and I kept as many of our staff members safe as I possibly could. We still lost 10 staff members because of that terrible virus, and I'm okay with the fact that they want to highlight that. I'm proud that I put the safety of my students and my staff first.
It's hard to say what's going to be, we talked about this before, a big topic come August, but immigration's going to be in there somewhere. I mean, this is a big issue in our country, big issue in our state. What have you seen in Florida that you would want to change, or have you liked what you've seen?
It's ironic. The same people who are talking about the masking are so for mass vigilantes shoving people in the communities into vans. I think that, obviously we need to have secure borders. I'm a mom. I want to make sure that my community is safe, and we want criminals to be held through due process and potentially deported. But we have immigrants here who are participating in our communities, following the laws, who are paying taxes, who are supporting our agricultural community, our tourism industry, our construction industry, and these people are being villainized. And what we need to do is do a better job. Washington has failed for decades, both Democrats and Republicans, when it came to this issue. We need to have a fast-track, streamlined process for these immigrants to become citizens and continue to participate in their communities and stop the terrorizing of them.
Are you surprised by the number we've seen that have been arrested that turned out are here illegally? And what do you do with that criminal side of things?
I mean, follow due process. Absolutely. If you're a criminal, then you need to be held through the process. Absolutely.
Let's talk about lowering rates or lowering costs, which obviously is a difficult thing to do. To get inflation down, what would be your way to attack that?
I think that there needs to be federal oversight for price gouging and to stabilize the insurance market. As a family here in Florida, I've seen my homeowner's insurance double and almost triple now since I've owned my home, and I'm about to be priced out of the community that I serve as an educator with my husband, and it's not right. And I know that there's families all across Florida who are feeling the same way.
When you talk to people, and obviously you've spoken to people to this point, you'll speak to a lot more between now and August. What are some things you hear back from them?
I mean, affordability. People are complaining, and I talk to people who aren't just Democrats, right? So people who have supported this administration are frustrated. They feel like they've been lied to. They were promised that prices were going to go down, and they go to the grocery store. They know that's not true, and so I really do believe that that's the number one issue this time around.
Republicans are going to say this started back after the pandemic. It kept going up. It takes a while to turn that ship.
Well, I'd say, well, that's what the Biden administration said, right? And so, that's not the promise that the Trump administration made to the people. He said he was going to fix it on day one, and he hasn't. And so, I'd also point to the fact that our representatives like Ashley Moody, they're not talking about those things. They're talking about, banning vaccine mandates. That's not what's on the top of people's minds in the state of Florida. We want to know how we're going to be able to pay our bills.
How important will law enforcement be in your campaign?
I come from a family of law enforcement. My dad was a correction officer in New York City. A lot of my family members are New York City police officers. I support law enforcement. It's critical to keep our community safe. And so obviously it'll be a talking point for us. But I haven't had any major conversations about it yet.
With your role, your 4 years Brevard County School Board, obviously you got involved in a lot of issues there that became divisive. I mean, how much will that play into when you go forward? In fact, let's go back to your Twitter page. I think it said elected leaders don't know SHI about the economy. I mean, that's kind of throwing it out there a little bit. Do you mean that?
Yeah. No, I absolutely mean that. I had to deal with 4 years of intentional chaos, distractions, divisiveness over culture war issues, but I also learned how to walk and chew gum at the same time, how to be defensive of the values and the institutions that I believe in and support communities that were being attacked, but also at the same time advocate for policies and things that I truly cared about and that I was elected to advocate for. And I think that's the distraction that we have in Washington today is people are getting stuck in these culture wars where we dealt with that 3 years ago, and they don't realize that that's not what people care about.
There have been some Democratic Party leaders across the country and in Florida had saying the party went too far left, and that's what happened in the last election. This primary will be interesting on the Democratic side to see who runs to the left, who runs to the middle, who runs to the right of the left. I mean, how might that play out, and how will you position yourself?
I don't really self-identify myself that way. I really don't. I take it issue by issue because reality is in the Democratic Party, someone who identifies themselves on the left may not identify me as on the left. Someone who identifies on the middle, same. I just think we really need people who are honest about where they stand on the issues, regardless of who they're talking to and what community they're standing in. And I've proven myself to be that person. I was very clear about who I was in Brevard County. I was an outed Democrat by my opponent, but I was proud about what I stood for, and I still was able to pull it off by beating her by 10 points. We
know this race would be expensive, and you know that getting in. So the campaign aspect of it, what's raising money, or just getting out to as many communities as you can. It's one thing to run a district. You've got a statewide race now. How do you plan to approach that?
Yeah, listen, I am hoping to be filled with that grassroots energy that I had for my school board race. I had it for my organization that supported school board candidates across Florida and swing states. I really think that there will be a organic momentum to this campaign, and we're going to take it a day at a time. Obviously, it's not going to be easy, but I'm going to do my best to earn support and votes and hope we can take it over the finish line.
Let's finish with this. You got 30 seconds with a voter. You're talking to him. What do you tell him?
I think it's time we have someone in Washington who understands how the decisions that are being made there impact your daily life and impact your wallet. We need somebody who isn't going to kowtow to special interests and extremist voices in their parties. We need someone who truly believes that we can't just live and work in Florida. We need to thrive here as families.
Jennifer, thanks for your time. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Jennifer Jenkins and Fox 35's Ryan Elijah, you heard them talk about it is certainly going to be an expensive race, certainly going to be something to watch. Meanwhile, in other political news here in the state of Florida, a state court of appeals striking down the ban on open carry of firearms here in the state of Florida, saying that is not constitutionally enforceable. We saw the Attorney General, James Uthmeier, weigh in on that just a little bit ago. Let me show you his tweet here, or his post on X, saying this is a big win for the Second Amendment rights of Floridians, talking about the importance of what he calls the God-given right to self-defense, calling it indispensable. We also heard from CFO Blazin Golia, who was speaking in Lake Mary just a little bit ago, and he was asked to react to this as well, and he said he believes the court got it right.
I think the court's got it right. I have been as a constitutional issue, I believe that there is a constitutional right to carry a firearm the way you want to carry a firearm. Now, just because, and I want to be clear here, just because there will be open carry by virtue of the court's decision does not mean that everyone is going to be open carrying everywhere that they go. So I want to be clear with that. There's this I know the left wants to think that everyone's going to be carrying firearms everywhere in Publix and in restaurants. That's just not going to be the case. But as a constitutional right, the greatest governing document that has ever been written in the history of the world, we have a Second Amendment right to do that, and the court got it right. Yes, ma'am. And you know another thing? Look, gun violence is everywhere. We see it. And a lot of it has to do with people that have mental health issues. And what I'm concerned about now, as a chief fire marshal, is some of these guys being targeted. Because there have now been numerous attacks on firefighters as well as law enforcement, just because of the job that they do. They should not. In fact, I think, and I don't think this is in statute right now, I did a bill reforming the death penalty laws. I think we should have another qualifier to the death penalty, that if someone shoots a fire, somebody shoots one of our firemen on their job, they should be eligible for the death penalty also. That's how strong I feel about that and protecting these guys.
That was CFO Blaise Ngolia speaking at the Lake Mary Fire Department just a little bit ago. Here is a live look at I-4 in Lake Mary from atop our tower above the Fox 35 studios here in Lake Mary. We're going to take a quick break on Florida Live, but we'll be right back. Live look right now at Daytona Beach from our Hard Rock Hotel camera, and the tide has certainly gone down quite a bit. Earlier today we were taking a look at this camera live on Fox Local and couldn't see any sand just about. So, but a cloudy day there in Volusia County. Welcome back into Florida Live. Garrett Wymer here, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon live on Fox Local and on YouTube. Tracking some news out of Tallahassee, where this week House Speaker Daniel Perez announced the committee assignments for the upcoming legislative session. And one of the committees that I know a lot of folks are keeping an eye on is this Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting. Obviously, this fits into a large conversation across the country about redistricting. We've seen a lot of attention in Texas and California to that issue. We know the governor has been pushing for this effort here in Florida as well. This is a committee that's going to be chaired by Mike Redondo, who is a Republican representative out of Miami. A couple of Orlando representatives on this committee as well, including Democrats Bruce Antone and Johanna Lopez as well. So a number of lawmakers now getting those committee assignments, including that redistricting committee one. And so we want to talk a little bit more about redistricting and this effort that we are going to see much more about in the coming weeks and months, and kind of how that fits into larger conversations and context as well happening across the country. And so joining us live now via Zoom to talk about this is Dr. John Satcher, a history professor at the University of Central Florida. And Dr. Satcher, always good talking with you, and we appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Good afternoon, Garrett.
So, Dr. Satcher, we knew that this committee was going to be formed. Speaker Perez talked about it before. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on kind of what the work of this committee will look like when it comes to congressional redistricting here in the state of Florida.
That's the great question, Garrett, isn't it? So it's a committee of 11 members. As you pointed out, there are 2 Democrats from Orlando, but they are only 2 of the 3 Democrats on the committee. So it's 8 Republicans, 3 Democrats, and they're tasked with, I guess, examining whether or not we want to redistrict Florida again. So in 2020, there was a census that gave Florida an extra seat. The legislature, really at the behest of Governor DeSantis, came up with new districts. So we have 28 congressional districts. Currently, the Republicans, or last election, the Republicans won 20 of those 28 districts. And I guess the question is, can they change the districts maybe to have more Republicans win? Or you can look at this as maybe some of these districts are not the most fair as they should be right now. And there's always a need for new redistricting. And the classic map you're showing there on the right, where they have the long district in the northern part of the state, is it appropriate to have a 200-mile district? So there are a lot of questions, and redistricting is always easy to point out when it's unfair. It's really hard to devise a fair districting.
And so what are some of the regulations, restrictions? What are some of the things that these lawmakers will have to kind of follow, or what do they have to guide them when it comes to these discussions and debates over what these districts will look like?
That is a great question. I mean, so essentially, we're supposed to put together 28 districts, and they are supposed to represent Florida in some way, shape, or form. Now, Florida clarified this in 2010. The voters of Florida put together a constitutional amendment. And in the constitutional amendment, it said that districts could not be put together in a way that would be gerrymandered to either favor an incumbent or to favor one party over the other. And also, in the words of the amendment, that they should not, with the intent or result of denying the equal opportunity of racial and language minorities to participate in the political process or to diminish their ability to elect representatives of their choice. So there is a situation where the Florida Constitution actually is pretty specific in what we want these districts to do.
We also saw a recent court decision that kind of took aim at one of the districts that had kind of previously been formed as well.
Yes, that's correct. Recently, the Florida Supreme Court made a decision that there was a district that stretched from Jacksonville through Tallahassee into Gadsden County. So it's basically almost 200 miles along the I-10 corridor. And that district was eliminated in 2022 with the DeSantis legislative new district. So essentially, that was represented by Al Lawson, who was an African American. And there was a lawsuit put in place that said that district was protected by this 2010 Fair Districting Act, Fair Districting Amendment to the Constitution. The Florida Supreme Court essentially decided, and they didn't say it specifically, but they sort of implied that this 2010 redistricting perhaps violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which guarantees people equal protection. So it said that any race-based district, which is what the Florida Constitution sort of stipulates, any race-based district might be unconstitutional because it doesn't allow, whether it's race-based to favor whites, African Americans, or any ethnic group, that might be unconstitutional itself.
We've kind of found ourselves, just to kind of back up and kind of look a little bit bigger picture here and fit things in the context of the country, we've kind of found ourselves, it seems, in a bit of a redistricting arms race when we've heard the discussions between Texas and California and trying to look at kind of reshaping these districts to favor either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. Is that allowed? And how does this effort in Florida kind of fit into to that?
Yes, in one sense, everything is new, but in one sense, it's pretty old. You go back to the very first congressional race. The people of Virginia, or the legislature of Virginia, tried to basically gerrymander a district so that James Madison, the author of the Constitution, couldn't get elected. So this has always been going on. Gerrymandering is named after a Massachusetts politician from the early 1800s. But here in 2025, I think it's taken on a more direct spin. First of all, we have elaborate computer systems that can try to figure out the best way to configure a state to benefit one party or the other. And I think it's always been implicit. You're never going to have a Democratic Party redistrict a state and come up with fewer Democratic seats any more than you're going to have a Republican Party redistrict a state and come up with fewer Republican seats. I mean, it's the nature of the party is to get people elected. But I think it's become more blatant. In 2025, people are more upfront about it. When you have essentially Donald Trump asking Texas for 5 more seats, are they going to find those 5 seats there? And then Gavin Newsom in California responding that they will find 5 new Democratic seats in California. So I think we have a situation where, in one sense, it's been going on for 200 plus years, but in another sense, I think the strident nature and the overtly partisan nature of it, of just finding seats to benefit one part or the other, that whether it's going on in Texas, in California, in Wisconsin, in Utah, in Florida, this probably has elevated redistricting to a level it hasn't achieved before. Also, simply the fact of redistricting in the mid-year cycle is also unusual. Traditionally, congressional districts are redone 2 years after the census. So every 10 years we have a census. So in 2012, 2022, 2032 would be the next time we redistrict. This idea of redistricting sort of mid-decade is really a rather novel idea. And I think that's one of the things that has changed significantly here.
I'm glad you brought that up because there has been a lot of talk about the reasons for that. We know here at the state level as well, not just when it comes to redistricting, they've complained about the apportionment and saying that the state of Florida should have gotten more seats in the last census and that they want that rectified basically sooner rather than later. We've heard talk of a mid-decade census. And so have these things kind of been done before, or is this kind of new ground that we're treading here?
So much of this is new ground. We've never had a mid-decade census to reapportion. And in fact, the only legislation at a national level that allows for mid-decade census specifically says that you cannot use it for reapportionment. That being said, the 2020 census, as everything that happened in 2020, is a bit unique. I mean, this is a census that occurred during COVID. So there was concern about undercounts. Certainly, Governor DeSantis has argued, and I think experts on demographic experts agree that perhaps Florida could have had an extra seat. So Florida, up until 2020, had 27 congressional seats. The 2020 census gave Florida a 28th congressional seat. It's perhaps that Florida should have 29 congressional seats right now. But it would not only be potentially not in a current legislation to allow for redistricting or a new census in 2025, I believe that the people who put together the census believe it's logistically impossible to have a census. I mean, here we are in September of 2025. We're talking about an election that's in November of 2026. That's really hard. I mean, we're counting 340, 350 million people. That's a lot of people to count. They're already well underway to organize the 2030 census, let alone to all of a sudden try to stick a census in the next year, get that data done, reapportion Congress, reapportion the districts. I think it's a Herculean task that I don't think is going to happen.
Dr. Satcher, last thing I'll ask you here before I let you go, and I'm just curious what you're going to be kind of watching for when it comes to the work of this redistricting effort here in Florida, and what maybe we should kind of keep our eyes open for when this work begins.
Well, I think that redistricting itself, I mean, it's fascinating. It is part of the democratic process we have in this country. You know, the reason we redistrict is not for partisan advantage. We redistrict because the people of the United States are sovereign. So therefore, we should have congressional districts that represent equal amounts of people. So to me, what's going to be most fascinating, whether it's a Democratic or Republican state trying to redistrict, I think they risk sort of cutting the lines too thin. I mean, if you want to make every district 51-49 in favor of your party, you're forgetting that the people are sovereign in this nation. And the people aren't always consistent. Just because they voted Democrat or Republican in the previous election does not mean they're going to do so again. What I'm interested to see is that in an effort to sort of stretch a partisan advantage too far, if it's going to backfire on some of these parties. If when we come up to the 2026 election, maybe if you've cut your advantage too thin, and voters either punish you for doing that, or voters simply change their mind about what party they're going to support and what issues they're going to vote on, that this might not work. The best laid plans here might not come to fruition, regardless of which party is putting together the redistricting plan. And so I'm really anxious to see how this plays out on Election Day in November of 2026.
Going to be interesting to watch. Dr. Satcher, I'm sure this is not the last time we will talk about redistricting, but I appreciate you joining us this afternoon here on Florida Live.
Thank you for having me. Always happy to talk about redistricting.
All right. Dr. John Satcher, history professor at the University of Central Florida. We are going to take a quick break here on Florida Live, but as we do so, give you a live look at our Lake Fairview camera from Grills Lakeside in Orange County. So keep it here on Florida Live. We've got more news on the other side of this break. Give you a live look right now west of downtown Orlando. So you can see Kia Center, you can see Camping World Stadium and Inter & Co Stadium as well. Welcome back into Florida Live. I'm Garrett Wymer, and thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon, live on Fox Local, YouTube, and also on Fox 35. Interesting developments for the University of South Florida in Tampa, announcing the hiring of Rob Higgins, who spent more than 2 decades as executive director of the Tampa Bay Sports Commission. One of the interesting things about this is that instead of hiring him as athletics director, which is commonly what you hear in universities for this role. They hired him as the CEO of athletics. And so Fox 13, our friends in Tampa, talked with the founder of the Bay Area Examiner about what that hire means for USF and the Bay Area. Here's some of that conversation.
The tweet went out to Pete Thamel, us, a few other people. I think Pete tweeted it first, but we had 1,500 words, obviously, we know.
Got it.
Yeah.
Why Rob Higgins and why CEO?
So the move to CEO, I think, shows a difference in the way that athletic departments across the country are being structured now. So I think a lot of schools are going to what they call a general manager model. So instead of the coach being the person, or the athletic director being the person that hires and fires the football coach directly or the basketball coach directly, you might see a general manager like you would in a professional sports franchise. So that general manager would sort of more be involved in the hiring and firing and structure. Whereas the CEO position will be more of like a fundraiser, someone to help build the stadium. And Rob was the associate athletic director for facilities at USF Athletics many years ago.
Plus, he must have some experience with the major venues around Tampa.
For sure. I don't know if anybody knows this city better, especially the ability to host events. He's hosted, that list of events that Tampa has brought in over the last week. It's incredible.
Super Bowl,
Super Bowl, Women's Final Four, Frozen Four, NCAA tournament will be here this year, first and second rounds. They just continually bring in the best of the best events and have done so for years. And I've always liked Rob's theory, which is that until you bring an event back, you haven't succeeded. And that's always been one of my favorite Robisms, is that until they come back, you haven't won the event.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
What does Rob bring as far as talent?
He's probably the hardest working guy that you could ever imagine. Rob and I briefly crossed over at USF. We both worked in the athletic department at the same time. I left in December of 2007. I think he left a couple years before to take over at the Tampa Bay Sports Commission. He's just a tireless worker, somebody who will do whatever it takes to put the hours in. But the thing that I think you'll always find is that, one, he's not afraid to have a sense of humor about himself, about what we're doing. The way that he's brought events in, whether it's getting powerbombed by Titus O'Neil to help get the WWE here for WrestleMania, or other things along those lines, like, he has just always been a part of bringing events in, but doing so with a smile and a laugh. And the other thing that he's done, and I think he did this when I was a student, both a student at USF and then as an employee, is that he's not afraid to think big and to engage an entire community. This is about getting thousands of people to attend USF games, not just football and men's basketball, but to make USF athletics a core part of the community. This needs to be a major community asset, one that's more valued and with more buy-in than they're getting right now. And that's why you hire Rob Higgins.
This leads me into my next
We are tracking breaking news here on Florida Live. I want to tell you we are seeing a reporting from Fox News that a conservative commentator, Charlie Kirk from Turning Point USA, has been shot while speaking at an event at Utah Valley University. So again, this is still very much a developing story. Can show you this tweet from Senator Ashley Moody saying, "My office is monitoring the situation at Utah Valley University. I pray for Charlie Kirk, the students, and this nation." We also have a tweet from the FBI Director Kash Patel saying, "We are closely monitoring reports of the tragic shooting involving Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. Our thoughts are with Charlie, his loved ones, and everyone affected. Agents will be on the scene quickly, and the FBI stands in full support of the ongoing response and investigation." Now, we know that Charlie Kirk, this is some file video that we've shown previously, was there at Utah Valley University for some sort of debate or some sort of event, it seems. We've seen social media video showing this as an outdoor event. And there is some graphic video going around on social media as well, so I would caution you about that. But waiting for more details on this, but monitoring these reports. from Fox News reporting that Charlie Kirk has been shot at Utah Valley University. One other thing I want to mention before we wrap up, we are expecting a news conference at 4 o'clock from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement giving updates on 3 suspects who were arrested in connection with the shooting of Florida State University freshman and Sanford native Ethan Pritchard. So we expect that to come at 4 o'clock. We'll have more coverage of that on a Fox Local, where the news continues right after this.